Coming up on this edition of Carolina Insider.
So we believe that our ceremony is special, and we'll be able to give graduates that experience.
UofSC announced in-person commencement exercises for spring 2021 graduates. A new podcast with former state senators is keeping South Carolina voters informed while having a drink. But first, Gamecock women's basketball finds out who and when they play in the NCAA tournament. Carolina Insider starts now. Hello, and thank you for joining us. I'm Dalton Mixon. Our top story today, the South Carolina women's basketball team is gearing up for March Madness. After having their hopes for a national title cut short by COVID last year, the team is heading to the big dance with some big hoop dreams. Here in today's Garnet Report is Jackson Fields at Colonial Life Arena with the details on the bracket. Jackson?
Thanks, Dalton. The women's basketball team found out they would be a #1 seed once again this year. They will face Mercer in their first NCAA tournament game this Sunday at 6 p.m. They come into the game with a 22-4 record and a recent SEC tournament victory. They will play the winner of Oregon State and Florida State if they win. This is their 5th time in the last 7 years being a #1 seed. Back to you, Dalton.
Basketball isn't the only big event USC students are talking about. There's another one heading their way in May. USC announced it will hold graduation ceremonies in person after canceling the past 2 because of COVID. They will be held outdoors at Williams-Brice Stadium. Graduates and guests must wear masks and socially distance. Seniors say they are excited.
To be able to celebrate with my peers, we've been alongside each other for 4 years, so to get to see all of us walk across stage and get our diplomas, it's just something that we just can't describe anymore.
As in the past, the ceremonies will be spread over several days. Food, housing, parking, along with tuition are just a few things college students think about before and during their undergraduate experience. How to pay for it all and budget accordingly is a problem for students here and across the country. Research shows American undergrads demonstrate a low level of financial literacy. A money management program at the Student Success Center is helping students learn about everything from budgeting to taxes and other financial skills. If you're interested in learning more about it, you can contact the Student Success Center on the mezzanine level of the library. In political news, new protections could be coming for gay and transgendered people in South Carolina. This week, state lawmakers put LGBTQ protections back into the state hate crime bill. The protections were taken out a few days ago. However, stalking and harassment were removed from the list of crimes that could add an extra hate crime penalty. The bill will now go to the full House after the House Judiciary Committee unanimously approved it. 2 well-known lawmakers are giving folks in the Palmetto State a peek behind the scenes of the South Carolina government. As Flynn Snyder explains, they're hoping to bring attention to many underreported topics, all while enjoying a glass of bourbon.
Each week, former South Carolina State Senators Vincent Shaheen and Joel Laurie come together to record their new podcast. In the podcast, called Bourbon in the Backroom, the two discuss what really happens at the South Carolina State House over, of course, a glass of bourbon. With 35 combined years of experience in state government, it may seem odd that these two are diving into a bottle of bourbon in the middle of the day. But Shaheen and Laurie say they started the podcast to solve what they say is a very real problem.
People don't know what's going on in their state government.
It's really what happens at the State House that affects their everyday life a hell of a lot more than what happens in D.C.
They say a decline in the number of reporters covering state government has resulted in much of what happens at the State House being left out of the headlines, leaving voters less informed.
So my uncle was there in the 80s and 90s, and he would say there would be almost 50 members of the press corps at the State House every day. When I got there, there was probably 20, maybe, and by the time I left, there was maybe 4 or 5 who were regularly there.
A study from the Pew Research Center shows that the number of full-time State House reporters across the country declined by 35% between 2003 and 2014. The state newspaper reporter Christina Myers, who covers South Carolina politics, say political reporters do the best with what they have.
And I promise you, from my experience and what I've observed and what I've read, that they're doing all they can to cover as much as possible.
Newspapers, though, are the type of news source that has the most State House coverage, according to Pew Research, yet they have been hit particularly hard by financial struggles. In February, media company McClatchy filed for bankruptcy. McClatchy is the owner of South Carolina's The State newspaper, though the company's filing said the financial struggles would not affect the number of people working in the newsroom. Still, the former senators say more can be done.
The other thing is that people don't know about the state elected officials. So I feel like they're very uninformed when they vote.
The two can add senators and now journalists to their resumes.
Back room.
Bourbon in the back room.
There you go.
For Carolina Insider, I'm Flynn Snyder.
That's it for this edition of Carolina Insider, a student production here in the Kennedy Greenhouse studio in the School of Journalism and Mass Communications. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you back here next Wednesday.